Puppy again with Puppy's Toy Box Whips. Link to my shop will be down in the description. Now, again, we're going into talking about quality markers for when you're in the market for buying a whip. And the first thing that one of my friends always asks me whenever I put a new whip up on Facebook or I'm advertising a new model that I put out, well, what's the core? What's the core? What's the core? And most people that I've seen who are making more budget whips or things that you can find on Etsy or whatever, a lot of times they don't tell you what the core is, and then a lot of times they'll say genuine leather, and that doesn't say much of anything, and it's really important that you know that. So traditionally, the core of a whip is going to be a wound rawhide. They'll take rawhide, which is just leather that they've taken off of a cow, and they've just thrown salt on it in the tanning process. And the way that I was taught to do rawhide is to actually soak it so it becomes limber, and then you would spin it into a spiral, and you would start wide at the top, and it would taper down, and then you'd let it dry. But the thing about rawhide, if you think about like a rawhide chew that a dog would have, that's going to be very rigid. And so, a lot of whip makers have moved away from using rawhide because it makes for an incredibly long break-in process for the whip. So, there are wound core whips within my shop, but I'll actually tend to use a wound latigo that I will actually bind with sinew in that cone shape. And so, one of the whips that I actually have brought out here for today is kind of the prototype for that, which this is, you can see it actually has that kind of stick shape other than the fall there. It does actually throw really well. I mean, it's a 18-inch whip, so it's not going to crack really loud, but it actually has some good play to it, more so than I think you would get with a rawhide. It didn't actually need any breaking in because this one's actually not braided at all, not plaited at all. I don't believe that it's ever going to actually get more loose like some other whips do. But the problem with this one is that if this part comes undone, you have to rewind this whole thing. Not that that's a particularly difficult process, but that is a risk that you would take for at least this type of overlay. The core itself, because there's so much binding on it, there's no way in hell it's ever going to come out undone. So that's one way that you might do a whip. Now, most of my whips actually have a braided, plaited latigo core. And the reason why I use latigo is that I can actually shape the latigo. I've got a splitter over here that allows me to make it thinner as I go down, and then I'll also taper the edges, and then I'll braid it. And this is an old one. I didn't like it, so I never used it. But you can see the thing that's important about a core is that it actually is rigid to a certain extent. This is only 4 plat. It's very thin around. It's like what, 1/4 inch to 3/8 for most parts on the way down. So it's not going to be completely rigid, but you see that it actually has the ability to start transferring energy. And so I use the phrase, a whip inside of a whip technique for developing whip. And the thing about that is that even your core should be able to throw like a whip and actually transfer energy the same way. And even, if you look through the Edwards book on making whips, the thing that they say is they even start you off making a 4 plat child's whip. So, this should be almost like any other whip, and then you just build a whip over the top of it. So the reason why I bring that up is that a lot of times what you have on the inside of it is going to be either a shot bag, which is perfectly fine for a lot of whips that are out there. A lot of sports crackers will use shot-loaded whips, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that until you get below 24 inches. So for BDSM play and things where you want to have a tight space, I don't recommend it. And I've actually rebuilt a couple of whips now that were shot loaded on that inside, and we removed lead shot and rebraided the whole thing. And the reason why we did that is because shot, especially when it's thick in the shot bag, it's going to become very rigid, and you're going to be relying entirely on the flexibility of that shot bag. Now, if you stretch that over 10 feet, 6 to 10 feet, sometimes I've shot loaded 3 or 4 foot whips, that's fine. When you're stretching it over that amount of time, that amount of flexibility actually turns into a good thing. And the shot bag actually doesn't go through the entire whip. Now, for a lot of cheap souvenir whips and that type of thing, what you get is rope. Now, every time I've kind of shown you, okay, how should a core behave? I've done this. That transfers no energy. If you were to actually try to throw this like a whip, it's flopping around. It's wrapping around my hand when I'm throwing it. Like it doesn't, it's floppy. There's nothing good about rope. The other thing is I can't taper rope. I can taper Latigo. I cannot taper rope. So the rope's going to be really thick. And a lot of times there was a whip that was made by Fetish Fantasy that was 8 to 10 feet long, whatever. And it had a rope core. And one of the tells is when they braided off the core, it went gonk. Right, so there wasn't a smooth taper, so that can be a tell for what kind of core that they have, and they're just going to say in the description what did they use for the core. I'm not really here to tell you, okay, there's a huge difference between if it's lead shot or if it's Latigo or if it's genuine leather or rawhide. There are advantages and disadvantages to each. There's a reason why shot loading is incredibly popular right now, because it does help with longer whips, and sports crackers really love it. I've seen BDSM players, but for me, since a lot of the whips that I make are for very tight spaces or for very intricate scenes, and I also, this one has this is a braided Latigo core. It throws just as well, but the thing is, I can't do this with a 3-foot whip. This is 18 inches. This is an 18-inch whip. You try to do a fast X pattern like this with a 3-foot whip or an 8-foot whip, it's not going to happen. The whip is not going to allow you to do that. You can volley the hell out of it, but you as far as like trying to hit somebody straight in front of you, you're going to have a slower pattern. So if I really want to ramp up a scene, this guy is going to be a much better tool than a shot-loaded long whip. And if I put lead shot in this, again, it's not going to bend through here. And so it's going to be like having a fall on the end of a stick. And that's not going to throw like a whip. So if you're looking in the market, like when you're looking on Etsy, you're looking on eBay, you're looking at whatever online shop you're looking at, the first question that should be on your lips is what's in the core. And if they don't tell you right away in the description, they probably don't want you to know. You can ask them. And again, check out the video I just made on the bevel type. That's going to be another very, very quick and easy tell for you. All right, I'll see you guys later.